I'm the founding director of this creative writing program, which began back in 1990, more or less. Also, for the last, I don't know how long, about 15 years, I've been the editor of the Notre Dame Review. The founding editor of the Notre Dame Review was Valerie Sayers. She jumped ship as soon as she could and took over after that. A few years ago, I started a prize series with the cooperation of the Notre Dame Press, which has been instrumental, a part in some ways of the creative writing program for a couple of decades. Insofar as we also started a long time ago, the Sandine Sullivan Prize, which is a book series, a volume of poetry one year and then a volume of short stories the next. And it would be a second book or better prize, meaning not a first book prize. But often in the modern poetry world and also the modern short story world, both sort of orphans of big publishing, the idea of publishing the second volume of poetry is often harder than publishing the first. So that prize has been going on a long time. The Notre Dame Review Prize, a little less, it started, its first volume came out in 2013. It is a first book prize with one exception, meaning the short story volumes, it has to be a first volume, and with the volume of poetry, it has to be a first volume. I made a tweak in the rules, thinking, well, novels are another kettle of fish, and I thought, well, novels can be not necessarily the first novel. And the first book was by James Redwood, came out in 2013, called Love Beneath the Napalm. The second one, which is a volume of poetry, came out in 2015 by John Choctaw. It was called Times Beach. And the present one for tonight is Thomas McGonigle's St. Patrick's Day, which came out in this year. If you can all remember what year this is. If you've had a concussion, that's one of the questions they ask. What year is this? So catch up on that, 2016. The only requirement, meaning people aren't allowed to apply for this prize, the Notre Dame Review Prize. I have a kind of dwarf genius in these matters, very small genius, and the rule I set up is that the only requirement was that you had to have already been published in the Notre Dame Review, which saved me and everybody else a lot of work. Because more or less it just meant we could pick what we wanted, which was the intention. The first thing Thomas McGonigle published in the Notre Dame Review was in 2013. It was a nonfiction piece, a memoir called Then. It, along with an essay by Harry Mark Petrakis, were both highlighted in the Best American Essays of 2013. And the issue they appeared in was singled out as one of the best thematic issues of the year. So that was an auspicious start for Thomas. He's published one other long piece in the Notre Dame Review, and hence the novel at hand. I'm now going to say a few expected things, expected introduction about our author. He was born in Long Island in 1944. His novels are, it's actually the second novel is Going to Patchogue. Came out in 1992 with Dalkey, And we have copies of his first novel, Corpse Dream, of N. Petkoff, which came out in '87 and then was reprinted by Northwestern University Press in 2000. One of the other things he's quite proud of, as he should be, is that he was the editor of the biannual Adrift. What was odd about Adrift, there are a lot of small magazines and journals that come out, but this one was on Irish American and Irish writers. There's always tension between Irish Americans and people who are Irish. And the biannual Adrift sort of addressed that by publishing them cheek by jowl. So it's something to be proud of when you're part of history. I, along with I suppose others of my age, have always been attracted by the notion of generations. Though generations as a category has completely fallen out of favor critically. Meaning, when I reached my majority, the generation I was interested in was and the one I sort of imitated was the one that came right before, which was the beatniks. And it was called the Beat Generation back then. And that was like, for the youngsters in the audience, that was like Allen Ginsberg. It was that era. Now, what happened is generations just became déclassé. What got substituted was a kind of marketing device where you were put into categories. They skipped over my generation entirely because we were transitional, and they went to what they were calling the Brat Pack, which was a pun on Frank Sinatra in Las Vegas, the Rat Pack. The Brat Pack was Jay McInerney and all the drug-addled young people in New York City who were writing bestsellers. So generations were gone. Both Thomas and I had the misfortune of growing up in the golden age of reading. There weren't other claims on your time other than books, meaning there weren't VCRs, there wasn't the internet, there wasn't television. You had to sit down at a specific time and watch Ed Sullivan or whatever you're going to watch, because everything was time bound. So the two things happened simultaneously. Marketing took over, technology advanced. Instead of talking about generations, words started being used in the culture like networking or interconnectivity. And if you notice words like that, of course, they have to do with technology. They don't have much to do with human behavior, even though they apply them to human behavior. Then came the celebrity culture, which has come full force in at least three major examples of recent history. Celebrity culture is so pervasive now that, let's say, the first institution that succumbed completely to celebrity culture was the Catholic Church and Pope Francis. They finally enacted the celebrity culture by making a celebrity a saint, and that was Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa was a celebrity, and then they made her a saint. It usually went the other way around. First, you're an obscure person who hardly anybody knew about, and you elevated them to sainthood. Well, the church decided we're going to make a celebrity a saint. The second institution that did that was the Nobel Prize. The Nobel Prize in Literature for my lifetime would take an obscure author that maybe a few thousand people had heard about and turn them into a celebrity by giving them the Nobel Prize. This time, they took a celebrity, Bob Dylan, and gave him the Nobel Prize in Literature, reversing the usual process of taking an obscure person and making them famous. They took a famous person and made them more famous. And just yesterday, the American people, succumbing to celebrityhood, did the same thing. They took a person who was a celebrity, known by name recognition, known by 99% of American voters, and made him president of the United States. So it's hard to resist the pull of the celebrity culture. But it's played havoc in the literary world as we know it today. But be that as it may, the prize exists, Thomas's book exists, and that's what matters for this evening. There's one blurb I want to read. There's this book, which is from Julian Rios. Let me just read the blurb that's on the back of the book. This is a retrospective portrait of a young Irish American in Dublin. St. Patrick's Day combines the acute vision of the best fictional memoirs from both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. It has both Edward Dahlberg's acid lucidity and the caustic tone of the fan's notes by Frederick Exley. If anybody under the age of 50 in this audience knows either name, I was going to say drop dead, but I might do that anyway, so I'm not going to say that. I make mention of these two uncommon American writers because Thomas McGonigle ranges with the Lone Rangers, the unique writers. And that's absolutely true. Now, I should have made this shorter, and I had intended to make it shorter because I was going to just say one thing, and the one thing I was going to say is Thomas McGonigle is a lot like I am, only worse. And then I realized that sentence didn't sound like the compliment I had thought it to be. But here he is, Thomas McGonigle.